Everything here is based on the need to do things as cost effectively as possible. All the work here is based on commercial translation, i.e. machine translation, which will be post-edited for commercial use in our products, just to contrast with the previous speakers. So, first of all, a little bit of MT history about why I should talk to you at all, and then about the choices we have these days, the resources that are available to us, and then a little bit on customization and measurement. If you're going to talk about money at the end of the day, you have to talk about measurement. Okay, so we started in 2004. A few other people started in 2004, and there wasn't much around, and we opted for the same type of things. I had 7 language pairs to do, so I had to go for a rules-based engine, and my language pairs were French, German, Italian, Brazilian, Japanese and Chinese. I got the Italian to work. It took some time, but I got it to work. And funny enough, Brazilian turned out to be one of our best languages. So, I don't know, maybe we were just lucky. We had to work on several things, and I'll allow people to read through this, but we spent 3 or 4 years really learning what it was to do rules-based and to make it work. And then when we thought we had that sort of lined up, then we looked at this strange statistical stuff that was being mooted, and we took a look at it in 2008, and I think we're just on the point of launching a production-ready SMT engine in-house now. So we've been looking at machine translation, using it and saving money with it for now on 5 or 6 years now. And I'm very happy we are. Now, it's not for the faint-hearted. If you get machine translation out of the box and you try to use it, you're disappointed. And lots of people have bought machine translation and walked away because they're disappointed. You have to hang in there. It's a tough one. Yeah, you have to be a persistent fighter. So we also spend quite a lot of time on research, because you soon get to the boundaries of what you can do. In the first year or two, you can get 10, 12, 15% savings, and then it gets harder and harder to do that. And if your management's like my management, they expect that 10 or 15% every year. 3% doesn't interest them at all. 2 blue points, laughable. I wouldn't even talk about it. So no one talks about 2 blue points. It doesn't happen. So, as I said, post-editing services. We had repeated questioning over here. That gentleman is gone. His loss. Our machine translation output has to be of acceptable quality, that post-editors can use it and not have to repeat the same edit time and time again. So if a machine continues to make a regular error, we think of ways using regular expressions in post-processing to get those repetitive errors out, so that the post-editor can have a sort of a human process in editing material, and not being basically a language-trained monkey to do the same fix again and again. So at the beginning, what did our translation companies think? They thought no, they weren't going to do it. So I was persistent, and I might have been very direct, but we got them to do it, and we learned from their feedback, and we made our quality of sufficient quality in most of the languages that they're relatively happy. German's tough, and it's very hard to please the Japanese, but we're actually managing to do it now. So, as I say, it's not for the faint-hearted. These days, you can get a new MT system every week. Somebody dreams up one, somebody makes one, and puts it out there, and this is going to be great. Because in our company, we have really 3 areas. We would have security, we would have storage, and we would have administration. And whereas the domains aren't perfectly separated, they're pretty well separated, and it means that we can now train statistical engines in each of those domains, in each of the languages, and try out our stuff. So there's custom systems offered commercially, and I must say some of them must be, I think, are quite good, but you pay for what you get, that's the way. Now, so resources, hardware. MIPS are getting cheaper. Do people still use MIPS? I'm old school, millions of instructions per second. No one even talks about it anymore. Well, Google is out there boiling the ocean every time you send in a string. It goes off to a server farm and the ocean temperature rises 10 degrees and then drops again. There are servers and servers and servers, and they're cheaper than ever before. And of course now we have the cloud, where if you don't really want to do all this at home, you can park it up in the cloud. And if you don't have a security problem, then that's fine, or a confidentiality problem, then it'll seem to work. Now, finding specialists. Where are you going to find your computational linguists and your linguists to do your dictionary work, to train your machines, to check your TMs? Plenty of work for good translators out there yet. Different work, but plenty of work. Vendors are coming on board who can provide those services. And for the people who really like taking a risk, and I might be classed among them, you can actually even crowdsource some of this activity. That's not for the faint-hearted, but it can be done. Now, I want to talk about customization for a while. I'm a big believer in machine domain tuning. And what does that mean? It means you have to look at your TMs and realize what sort of state they're in, and if they're as clean as you thought they were. And should you really be using these for training at all? And then when you do your tuning, and especially when you do your testing, I always like to make sure that the test data isn't in the training data. You can get the old result well fudged if you actually have some of your test data still in the training data. And I've heard the naive say that, if it's in the data, it's in the data. Take it out of the bloody data and train with it and then test. And so you get a real answer and not be caught in yourself. Fooling somebody else is one thing. Fooling yourself is a disaster. So, and the other thing is broad domain is very necessary for some applications. If you have a customer who's trying to communicate with you, you can't expect that customer to communicate with you in your company style. So you have to have a broad style, and a broad domain engine would be, I think, perfect for that. So I think we're looking at far into the future, personalized domain tuning for multilingual community interaction, whatever that means. There's an infinite number of domains out there, an infinite number of customers, and one of these days we're going to have to be very careful about each and every one of them if we want to stay in business. So it's all ahead of us. Plenty of work to be done. Measurement. Human versus automatic. The human evaluation is the gold standard. It's a very flaky gold standard because humans are squidgy. They're very variable, and if how many translators, if you have 10 translators looking at a document, how many points of view do you have? So it's the same with human evaluation. But on the other hand, the automatic evaluation gives you a false sense of security. Whether you use TER or GTM or Blue, you get your 3 blue points, and you think you've done something. No translator on the planet or no customer on the planet cares about 3 blue points. They just don't. So the human perception may be coarse and individual and expensive, but it's still human. But the automatic stuff is really good when you're training something and you can see yourself, is it getting better or is it getting worse? But don't confuse the two things. It's a few blue points here, it mightn't be that much better than you think. The challenges ahead, very quickly. Do we ever think about how much it takes to machine translate a word? Bet you don't. Like when you're doing billions of them, you might. And I think there's a couple of metrics up here that we should think about, because at the bottom line is scalable, affordable, and adaptable. And right at the moment, we're not that sure about scalable, and we're not really that sure about affordable. And we hope for the future to make it adaptable. And thank you very much. No answers from me, just questions.
Thank you very much, Fred. questions, remarks? Excellent. No more. No one. Unfortunately, Joseph has left. So. Hans?
So one of the themes seems to be with the other users, seems to be this move from rule-based systems to fully statistical systems. They leave the rule-based systems because they are much too expensive, and then they spend lots of money on the statistical systems, as they just told us. So then it costs quite a bit, and of course, there was more to say. Both are actually expensive in a way. So what is can you combine rule-based and statistical systems at Symantec? I remember that you worked quite a bit with rule-based systems. So
we did a paper last year on statistical post-editing with Systran, where we used Moses Engine Afterburner on the rules-based engine, and for some languages we got 8 to 10 blue points out of it, which meant there was something in it. I would like to do more of that, and I think personally that it's about trying to isolate the things that the rules engine is strong with, preserving that, and then exposing where the rules engine isn't so strong to the statistical methods. But we're scoring up around 50, 60. Sometimes we're inching up into 70. And I think the two technologies we have won't get us much beyond that. And I think there's a huge challenge out there to get us the rest of the way. And it's a very tough gap between 70-odd and 100. And I imagine that's what the European Commission will want to fund.
Just to avoid misconception, because there was this misunderstanding, because there was this question before. I did not say as DGT, we're moving away from rule-based and putting all the money on statistical. I used the term data-driven, okay, which is not statistical necessarily, okay, and also that we really want what we want. We do not want to have to go there with the conclusions already made. Mm-hmm. We want to draw conclusions. Okay, thank you.
May I also add? Yes, I can also only reinforce what has been said by my colleagues, because it is not a matter of moving from rule-based and then investing all the funds available into statistical. On the contrary, it is about seeking for quality. Whatever will provide the best quality will be the chosen, the selected one.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering, can we learn from speech technology in that respect? They're the ones who also, started out actually doing statistical processing and then started using more rule-based approaches to augment their own system. I don't know.
This is to the research community.
Nobody does.
Yeah. I suppose this is a question to the research community.
Ja, Josef. It's a man dinner.
This is a question, I guess, for all the panelists. We have the statistical stuff, we have the rule stuff. There is one other body of information that I haven't heard any of the speakers addressing, and that is large unilingual corpora from the languages themselves, something equivalent to the British National Corpus. There was a Spanish corpus of some sort, but it would seem that if you really want translations that where the output matches the language of the reader, there's going to need to be a third match. And that is not simply to have translation memories where somebody's already translated this, but to actually have large corpora of the languages as they're used, corpora of the press, publications, and books, and then compare translations with texts in those. I'm just wondering whether anybody whether it's the EU's, eighth or seventh framework or something like that, is looking at that aspect of building up machine-readable culture in all of the European languages and other languages to make use of.
Much too hard a question for me.
I can just to say one thing. This is one of the issues that we want to look into. I also do not know what is happening, but you heard already today that there is an initiative for the Latvian national corpora. There are national initiatives, and what we can do through not necessarily the research project on this, I think that Kim could probably answer, but in terms of translation and really implementing things, it's in our intentions to explore what is available at the national level. And there we try, it's difficult to find the path to this information in many cases. Now I have heard about the Latvian, let's say for the Polish, I think, national corpora. I've heard in another. Okay, so it's this at this stage is fragmented information.
Thank you again to the speakers and to you for the record number of questions.